earlier today in Washington, D.C. Brady campaign holding a big dog and pony show, big press conference calling for restrictions on what you can own. They want to ban any magazine that is capable of holding more than 10 rounds of ammunition. They've come up with a new phrase, assault clips, to describe a very old product. And they've got legislation introduced by Carolyn McCarthy ready to go. And they are pushing this hard. By the way, tomorrow night, HBO is going to be airing a brand new gun control documentary. I've got the New York Times review of this. Cameron, do not let me forget. I've got to go over the review of this tomorrow night. I'll save it for the night that the show actually airs. It's the stereotypical New York Times story. So they're going to be getting, some legs. I mean, this story and what they're trying to do will get a lot of coverage in the mainstream media this week. Which is why I think it's important that we listen to what they had to say so we can actually, rebut them with the truth. But rather than hear their scripted remarks, because, again, we all know what they're going to say in their scripted remarks. They're going to blame us. They're going to say that we're standing in the way of progress and common sense, and who on earth could be opposed to legislation like this, blah, 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 blah. I thought it'd be better to actually hear the Q&A that came after these scripted remarks, and that way you could actually hear what the press asked the Brady campaign. Were they hard-hitting questions? Were they softballs? And you could hear what I hope is a more unscripted response from the Brady campaign members who were present today. So let's go ahead and get started here. Looks like at the podium we've got Sarah Brady, Paul Helmke, and I believe that is Senator Frank Lautenberg. Oh, I'm sorry, that's Carolyn McCarthy. And I believe that's Senator Frank Lautenberg from New Jersey as well. So let's go ahead and get started. We may be stopping here when I need to interject, but we'll go ahead and start rolling.
For Congresswoman McCarthy, you might be able to answer this. Was there a rider that got cut from the continuing resolution that had to do with ammunition? I wish I had better details to launch the question, but I understand there was a rider that didn't make it that had to do with ammo.
That actually, as far as I know, don't know anything about that unless it was something that might have been put in through the on the Senate side. I don't know.
No, it was put in.
Can you come to the microphone?
This is Lautenberg now.
It was put in the House side by Congressman Boren, and it fortunately did not pass. It prohibited. A Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms from banning this activity that would have had long guns, automatic weapons listed or available in the southwestern states.
It was
All right,
the reporting requirement.
Can we pause this for a second here? Besides the rather incoherent answer that Senator Lautenberg gave, I love the fact that he conflates long guns and automatic weapons. Your bolt action, that's it's the same length roughly as a machine gun, so it's got to be the same thing. But again, not a single reporter in that room would have called him out on it. That's the sad thing. All right, let's listen to Helmke and see if Helmke could give the response and a better answer. If he can't explain it, I'll explain what they're talking about.
Requirement. Currently, gun dealers who sell more than 5 handguns, is it 5 or 2?
It's 3.
Dealers who sell more than 2 handguns in 5 days have to report it. They don't have to report more the long guns that are sold. So ATF has been looking at requiring reporting for long guns the same as handguns, particularly since we now see long guns used in so many shootings, the semi-automatics. While ATF has been going through the rulemaking process, Congressman Boren introduced a rider that was put in there that would have stopped that reporting requirement. So it didn't really deal with bullets.
And I think what you should also know over the years, the NRA has been able to convince enough members in Congress and the Senate to cut the budget for ATF, so they can't even do the job that they're supposed to be doing. And I think that is wrong too. They keep saying we can't enforce the laws. Well, we can't enforce the laws unless we have ATF out there being able to do their job, and they have not been allowed to do their job.
More questions?
All right, let me just stop for just 1 second here. How bad is it when the head of the Brady campaign doesn't know what the gun laws are in this country? Is it 5? Is it 2? I'm not exactly sure. I'm here at a press conference with the major media, but I'm not really sure what the laws are on the books. But I know they're not good enough. I know that. Gee, many Christmas. All right, let's hear from the media again, shall we?
Has there been any conversations with the Republican House leadership about this at all? And do you think that it's going to come to the floor? Are they indicating any sort of bipartisan cooperation on the bill?
Look, you've been
We're working closely with Congresswoman McCarthy and have been in contact with a number of Republican offices. We feel that we're close on that. It's there's been a lot going on, obviously, with the near government shutdown last week. With going into the 2-week recess, we're hopeful that we can again touch base with these offices and hopefully have some Republicans to sign on come May.
It's not easy, friends, to build a constituency that is in opposition to NRA policy. But it is possible, and when someone like former Vice President Cheney says that we ought to take a look at this, that sends a signal, I think, that we can use effectively. We just have to work on it, and we're going to continue to do that.
I think also, I think it's important to note that right from the beginning, when we introduced the legislation, we had a plan. And the plan had 2 points, working certainly the members of Congress here, but also working with the grassroots across the country. And that's where we're seeing our largest response from. We're seeing editorials, we're seeing letters being written to the editors. So there are people out there that basically now are getting energized, and it's up to us to keep that base energized. So that takes time, I understand that, and there have been a lot of things up here on the Hill, but that doesn't mean that we have stopped working what we're doing, plus everything else that we need to do. But as Kelly knows, nurses and women can do 5 things at one time, and so we'll continue doing that.
All right,
I might mention too.
Stop for a second here. What grassroots are we talking about here, Representative? The media is what she's referring to, right? I mean, well, we've got to mobilize the grassroots, we've got editorials going, and we've got to energize the base, which is the media, and then there's no grassroots. There are no grassroots support for this. There's media support. And again, that is their base, I guess, but good gracious. And I love the spin. So how many Republicans have you gotten to sign it? Well, we've got a plan. We've got a secret plan. Yeah, you know, the underwear gnomes in South Park had a secret plan too, but they never found a way to make money. All right, more from the gun control advocates.
I mentioned too, it's this ad that we're coming out with tomorrow, or going to start running on television tomorrow.
The ad where
And
the
you can see that
psycho is shooting the little silhouette of the little girl. All right, go. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But this is an ad that we may be running in some of these districts where some of the Republicans or others that we consider that hopefully are considering which way to go on this to help convince them. And in the ad, again, banassaultclips.org. .com, sorry.
God, Paul,
.com.
how unprepared were you for this thing today? Gah! I'm sorry. I mean, I guess I should be happy, but I mean, man, know the website, know the laws. I'm sorry. All right, I'm not. And by the way, I'm not even going to give you the website again. But go ahead.
The case very viscerally that there is no need for this type of an assault clip. That again, its only purpose is to kill a lot of people quickly.
So why do the police have them? Keep going. I'm just interjecting.
Just to throw in a request for Kelly to keep on bringing the message as directly as she did, and people will listen to her. We have to make sure that your message, and we ask you, Kelly, as tough as it is, keep on doing what you just did with us. Talk about it, please.
Over the last 2 years, we worked very closely with Congresswoman McCarthy, Senator Lautenberg on their bills to ban the gun show loophole, to close the gun show loophole, the loophole for private sellers that they don't have to do background checks. And it took us about 1.5 years to get to about 110 co-sponsors. With commitments, we are already over that in basically 3 months.
Right.
So this is moving very quickly. Also, when we look at the history behind the Brady bill.
Oh, I'm
once
sorry.
we
Can I
got to about
stop for a
150
second now here? Okay, so they're now listen. Clearly, the Brady campaign is launching a major effort. I don't want you to think that I'm downplaying the energy and the attention that they are giving this magazine ban, because this is very, very important to them, and it is very, very important that as gun owners, you contact your congressman and you let them know what you think about the McCarthy bill. So I don't want you to think that I'm downplaying this, but I do have to point out that they're bragging about 110 sponsors in a 435-member House of Representatives. Now, it's very important that we make sure that that number stays below, let's say, 218. But they do not have the support of anywhere near a majority of Congress right now, and it's up to us to make sure that it stays that way. All right, let's listen to more from Mr. Helmke here.
Co-sponsors on the Brady bill. That's when we started to get hearings. That's when we started to get votes. It didn't pass on the first time through, but we feel this is moving quickly. We feel confident that we can get close to that 150 figure, and I think then folks are going to pay attention to this issue when we've got a good chance to get it passed.
For Ms. O'Brien, if I could ask you a question.
Yeah, okay.
About Gabe. Gabe was drawn to Capitol Hill. He had a job up here. Did he have faith in the mechanism, the legislative mechanism, that you now think by lending support to this bill, you can get it through? Tell us a little about your talks with him on that.
I actually knew nothing about politics before I met Gabe, so he taught me a lot, and he
Now,
loved
the woman you're listening to now, by the way,
America
you can just
and
lower
how
the
it
audio a
works,
little bit here.
and
This is the fiance of one
so
of Representative
happy
Gabrielle
just to be
Gifford's
part of
staffers,
that.
who was
So-
killed in Tucson, who has now come out in support of the
think he would be
magazine
proud.
ban. And that really was the purpose for this press conference today, was to introduce her to the media, again, as the emotional hook to the legislation. We need to ban magazines with that are capable of holding more than 10 rounds of ammunition, and she's there to provide that sort of emotional hook to the story. Let's go back to this press conference, and again, the woman that you're hearing from, the fiance of one of the staffers of Representative Gabrielle Giffords, who was killed in Tucson, Arizona, who the Brady campaign invited to D.C. today to demonstrate her support for the magazine ban legislation.
Have faith in the mechanism, the legislative mechanism, that you now think by lending support to this bill, you can get it through? Tell us a little about your talks with him on that.
I actually knew nothing about politics before I met Gabe, so he taught me a lot, and he loved America and how it worked, and it made him so happy just to be a part of that. And so I think he would be proud. Thank you.
Sure.
This is Ross Zimmerman, Gabe's dad.
Hi, folks. I wasn't sure if I was going to speak to you. I'm also not sure whether you're reporting this or perhaps listening to it too. One of the things that I hear most commonly from people who try to comfort me and express their feelings after this event is that they couldn't imagine it. Well, I certainly couldn't imagine it. My son and I talked about the idea of a parent losing a child. It never occurred to us it would happen to us. It never occurred to us that Gabe was in any danger. It never occurred to us he would be the first congressional staff member in U.S. history to die in the line of duty in front of a Safeway. What is so hard about the idea of common sense, responsible behavior? What is so hard about banning something like this? This is a little piece of a much larger picture. I have plenty of friends who own guns. None of them think these things are reasonable. There is no rationality to this. This is something that must change.
All right,
And you need to
let's
report
stop.
about
Let's
that.
stop for a second, because again, I'm not going to attack this individual who is very clearly grieving the loss of a son. And you know what? He's right. I can't imagine going through that. I hope I never have to. But this can't be a debate that is based entirely on emotion. It just can't be, because that's not a good way to deal with legislation on any issue, purely by emotion. That's a legislative recipe for disaster, and I don't care what issue you're talking about. So one of the things that Mr. Zimmerman said was that this is a little piece of a larger picture. So what's the larger picture? If this is just a little piece, and this is just one step of the big overall picture, then I think we deserve to know, in order for us to make our most informed decision about this particular small piece of legislation, where does this fit into the bigger picture? And what is the bigger picture here? What is the larger agenda of the Brady campaign? What is the larger agenda of the Violence Policy Center? If it's not this, what is it? And it can't just be common sense legislation. That's the larger issue. No. Let's get away from the empty rhetoric. Let's get away from the platitudes. And let's actually have a conversation. What is the next step? Okay, it's not banning magazines with a capacity of over 10 rounds. That's not the end-all, be-all. It's not simply banning private sales of firearms across the nation, not just at gun shows, but everywhere. What is the larger picture? The Brady campaign, came out with this 17-point plan about a month ago to change our gun laws. 17 points. So are we looking at now 17 different gun control bills? And even then, I don't think that the Brady campaign would be satisfied with the passage of just those 17 gun control bills. And this is why, and I don't think I'm speaking as anything other than a father. Now, I don't even know if I'm speaking as a gun owner here. But this is why I feel so bad for these folks who have suffered such a tremendous loss and are now being told that perhaps the best way to honor those that are gone is to pass a piece of legislation that won't prevent these kinds of things from taking place in the future. Again, if you want to pass a law that says somebody like Jared Lee Loughner can't ever hurt anybody, it's not this legislation, because this legislation won't guarantee that. In fact, think for a moment. Just think to yourself for a moment the types of laws that we would have to have in this country to really ensure that a monster can't hurt innocent people. Imagine we had all of those gun control laws that would ensure that a monster could never hurt innocent people with a firearm. Do we think that even with all of those gun control laws that would necessarily need to be in place, that would prevent monsters from hurting innocent people? I can tell you, as somebody who grew up in Oklahoma City, no. Monsters will not be persuaded or dissuaded. Those with evil in their hearts will not be thwarted by a piece of legislation. Even if these gun control laws that would be needed were successful, do we really think that would stop evil? Look at all of the ways people have figured out how to inflict great bodily harm, injury, and death on innocents around the world that don't involve the use of a firearm. Those monsters will not be persuaded by a piece of gun control legislation. This is a mental health issue. If you want to try to stop the Jared Lee Loughners of the world, then you have to ban their brains. You have to try to figure out a way to get the Jared Lee Loughners help, if help can be given. And if not, then you have to figure out a way to remove them from general society where they could hurt and harm innocent people. But that's a mental health issue. That's not a gun issue. And again, if you want to go back to the idea, well, we need this law so that we can have lower violent crime rates, we know that that's a lie too. We know that these types of laws haven't done anything to lower the crime rate in Chicago or D.C. or even California. Because what we're dealing with is a culture of lawlessness that cannot be defeated by legislation. But don't take my word for it. Contact your state representative, contact your U.S. representative and your U.S. senator. Let them know what you think about the bill as well.